Hello and welcome to the third part in the series where we are building Pong from scratch. So let's take a look at where we're currently at. We have last time gotten the movement happening for the paddles and for the ball itself. We've got our level blocked out, we've got the skeletons there in terms of the main menu, so we've got a bunch of bits up and running. This time around, it is time for audio. So we want to get some scoring and that happening. And I also want to get the sound effects. So we had a few bits and pieces that we want to have up and running in this. So I think a good starting point is actually going to be the audio side of things, because it's going to be a really quick one for us to get up and running. So under audio, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create an audio mixer. Main game mixer. So I'm using the audio mixers because I want to have a bit more control over how everything is sounding and being able to manipulate that a fair bit. So I just want to link that up so my main camera has that as its... no, that's right, I link it up to the sources. I was thinking for some reason it was on the listener, but no, it's on the sources. So the ball is going to be the main thing emitting sounds. So the ball is going to need an audio source. That we link up to our mixer. And we need to set up our mixer groups. So I'm going to bring this over here. So we've got our main group. Let's also then set up, we want a child group for SFX. And we might also have background music. So I'll just have those two ones for now. I'm not going to configure initially any background music, but key thing is I do want to get the sound effects hooked up, because now I can link this up so that will play on sound effects, which is good. And we can then start to look at getting some sound effects in here. So because it's Pong, I want to go for that sort of 8-bitty style sound. So using BFXR is a good option for that. So I want to look at the different ones that I want. So if I go back to my planning document here, well, audio, I wanted one for hitting the wall. So let's test out a couple of ones. That's not a bad one. That's sort of pretty decent. Let's try a couple of variations of that. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to export that. So that is going to be wall hit 1. Actually, hit wall. And I want to generate a couple of variations of it. So this mutation option is quite good because you can just actually tell it to mutate. There is a fairly good range that it'll do. So it just gives you some slight variations with it, which is good. So we can call that hit wall 2. 2 is enough, I think, for now. We can easily add in additional ones if we need. Now, I want sort of some different ones for when it then hits the actual paddle. So I want that to sound different, just so we've got something that's giving us a bit of additional feedback there with that. So let's see, try a couple of these other sort of template ones. That's probably good as a fail sound, actually. So that can be a scored goal. I'm going to have a couple of variations of that. That one's not as great. That's all right. So just give us a couple of variations there. So we've got our goals scored. We've got hitting the wall. We want to get one for hitting the paddle. Definitely not a jump sound. Let's try. That could be annoying. Kind of like it, but that's better because it's shorter. Yeah, I'm actually going to go with that as a hit paddle sound. Paddle 1. Let's try another one of that. Let's see if we can get another variation that sounds similar. That works. Hit paddle 2. So we've got those ones, and then we just need a end game sound. Explosion feels like it's a potentially good candidate for that. Now I might, if I increase the sustain time, that's not bad. That makes it sort of fade out. What if I lower the decay time? Actually, I think the decay time one is a better change there. So if I take... Good. That's not too bad. That could work. And the key thing is we're just wanting some basic ones in there. So I think that will do. That gives us our sound effects. Now, the thing that's going to be controlling playing these, so we've got actually different ways we could approach this. So we could have it at the ball. So a lot of the things are going to be emitted by the ball, and that it's reacting to hitting something, it's reacting to going through the goals. There's a lot of particular things there. I actually think I'm going to change my mind on this, and I think what I'm going to do, set up an object here that's going to be various managers for the game. And what I'm going to have is, let's have an audio manager, and let's also, because we're going to want it at some point, a game manager. I think that's a better setup. Because then in here, I'm going to create my managers. So the idea is these will be central points. So manager objects are typically a central point that other objects can easily talk to and communicate with. So I'll create my audio manager. And I'm going to do something here that we haven't really sort of seen before in other ones for being able to easily find this. So what I can do is I can set up a very rudimentary version of what's called a singleton. So the idea behind a singleton is that it means that only one of it can exist. And by virtue of only one of the thing existing, it makes it really easy to actually sort of work with it. And so you can track it down really easily, talk to it really easily. It's handy from that point of view. So the general structure we would see for something like this is I would have a property that is static and public, typically called something like instance. And then in this case, I am going to say that that has a public get, but a private set. So what this means is this is able to be, that is able to be read from anything, but only within this function, only within this class, sorry, can it actually be set. And then in awake, what I would do is check, well, if instance is not null, so if we've somehow accidentally tried to create multiple of these, first let's log out an error. Found multiple audio managers, and we destroy the thing that's tried to create a second one. So it just ensures a little bit of safety there. And by doing a log error, we ensure that we know particular things happened. So that looks all right. Now this is going to need an audio source. It's going to need that. Source, which I can just do my usual retrieving of that here. Get component, audio source. And then what we want to have is a set of helper functions that other things in the game can talk to. So what it means is that things like the ball doesn't need to store audio. And it means that it keeps it all in one place. So we'd have public function on, and then we'd have our different events that we would be having being able to happen here. So for example, ball hit wall. We would have on ball hit paddle, on goal scored, and then on game over. Oops. On game over. Because what this lets us do is in our ball controller here, we can say, hey, audio manager instance. So we don't need to actually find the class, so we're not needing to do any searching for it. We can just directly go, hey, audio manager, your instance on ball hit paddle. Same within the wall, audio manager instance on ball hit wall. And for these, we could, this will be stuff where void on goal scored. And then we would be indicating who it was scored by. So that might be something where we could indicate, whether it was player one or let's see, player number. Not sure yet with that, so I'm not going to put in a parameter there and lock us in at this stage, just because I want to work that out once we're implementing that. So we can say on goal scored. On goal scored just means that we've got all of these linking through for trying to play the sounds now. And then in our audio manager, we can start to set up our set of audio clips. So we'll have our audio clip. And so this will be sound effects, ball hit wall. Of audio clip, sound effects, ball hit paddle. Another one for goal scored. And the final one for game over. That gives us a set of potential clip ones. Now, all of these are just going to be picking a random one and playing it. So what I'm going to do is pick random clip. Just a little helper function, because it's a task that I'm going to be doing so many times that it's really handy just to have a helper function that's going to make that a little bit easier for me. Because what I can do is I can do a check here of f clips out is 0, or let's also check if clips is null. So if we don't have any set up, no audio clips configured. Just so we get an error message so we know exactly what's happening here. And then we just run our logic as normal because we want the error to occur. What we want is that exception to occur, because that means we get a call stack so we can identify where this has come from. But we also have that log error so we know exactly what's gone wrong. And that log error will appear above the exception in the console. So it means that it's really easy for us to track down what the problem is. So that'll be good. That will pick a random clip. Then what we can do is, well, we've got our audio source. So link source, play, and it is a play one shot. Pick random clip, and then we give it our SFX for ball hit wall. We could see maybe we want to do some slight tweaking of the volume, but probably not at this stage. So this just means we've got some nice, easy setup for playing the particular things. So SFX, ball hit paddle, SFX, goal scored, and SFX, game over. And it also means now that we've got this infrastructure set up, we can see that it's really easy any case where we need to add in additional audio for this, that it's going to be a really straight setup for it, which is great. Really easy setups for things, and lower maintenance overheads are always good. So let's test this out. So to do that, we need an audio source in our audio manager. We need to say what group it is. So there we go. We've got our SFX here. There might be a little bit of reorganization on this we do at some point. I'm going to turn off play on awake. Not that it'll actually start playing it, but audio manager. So we can link up our sounds because we've got all of those here. So my audio manager, well, I've got my game over sound. I've got hit paddle 1 and 2. I've got hit wall 1 and hit wall 2. And my scored goal ones. Just check that that's referring to the right ones. That looks good. So we should hear sounds now. So let's test this out, make sure that we're getting sounds coming through. So that's good. We've got some initial sounds there. Let's test again. And trying to, so we've got the paddle sound. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that set of sounds. Excellent. So we've got that all up and running. Now I am going to make a slight change here where under this I'm going to create an SFX and I'm going to create background music just because I want to have separate audio sources for these. Thus, because they can link them to different mixer groups. So audio source, this one links to background music. That does mean then that I need to change this, serialize field. Now one of the handy things is I can do a rename on linked source here. So this can be SFX emitter, just means then I get rid of the get component. And then I'll also have a background music one for when I get to the stage where if I wanted to add in background music. There's not a tool that I've seen that just nicely generates a whole bunch of really cool 8-bit music. And we definitely don't want to string together a large amount of stuff from BFXR because that would be painful. Let's get rid of that. And then this will let us just link things up. And that'll be the audio side of things hooked up. And then we can start to set up our scoring behavior. So we can get rid of this. And we'll just link up these. So that's good. So this, our sound effects are up and running. So time for some scoring setup. So what I'm going to do is this is where I will end up setting up now a game manager. And so that will go onto one of our objects here. So that will go onto this one. So Game Manager is going to handle that, scoring happening, things like of that. So then we also want to add in our UI. So let's set up, and as always, we'll have a little panel. So this is going to be the score HUD. And we'll just set up scaling properly. Now the score, I really only want that to be appearing in that sort of top part of the screen. So let's change my settings here. And although I don't strictly need to change the anchor points, I do like to do that just so the numbers are a little bit clearer and more logical. That's pretty good. Let's check that to like 150. 175. So panels will usually leave the image on initially while I'm getting things set up and running with it. Just makes it a little bit easier to see. So then I want to add in my text, because what I'm going to have is I'm going to have player 1 score. I might actually put these in panels, because I think that might allow me to do some cool things with this. So I'm going to set up 3 panels. So this is going to be player 1 panel. This is going to be the spacer. This is going to be player 2 panel. And then my score HUD, I don't want it to be actually that size. So I'm going to actually switch over then now to this mode to have it centered. Because I think I just want the scoring panel to be like that, maybe 500. So nice and centered. I don't want it taking up a huge amount of space. I think that looks good. I would be able to add in a horizontal layout group here where we're controlling the width and height. So that looks all right. I want that spacer to be smaller though, because I'm going to have text in all of these. So let's add that in. So if you select all of the things, you can actually then go down to UI, and then when you add something, adds it to all of them. So again, we're blocking out text. So what I recommend is put in values larger than you actually would be realistically using. Well, not a huge amount larger, but at least a little bit. So that's good. I'm going to rename these. It's a dash, and this is score. And again, keeping the naming of these consistent, making sure we're giving it logical names is going to make it a lot easier for when we're working down the track with this. So, all right, let's fix up the alignment of these. So all of these, we want them to be set to stretch. We can zero out these, and we want to center them all, just so we've got a sense of the amount of space that they're taking up. Because then we can start to mess with the font size. I reckon we can go larger than that. 96 feels pretty good. That feels, yeah, I think a good sort of spacing. I think the dash I want to make maybe larger. Pretty good. So that's looking all right. For this spacer one, we obviously want this to be narrower, but we've got layout groups happening, so they're taking up a lot of the space, unfortunately. So what we could do is we've got a couple of options. So one option, now that we've got everything already nicely organized, is actually turn off and get rid of the horizontal layout group. Our spaces here, well, this one, we set this to be anchored over to the left. We set this one to be anchored over to the right and stretched. And we leave this one in the middle and also stretched. So we check our top and bottom spacing looks good there. This left one, can adjust this, and again, They're near effectively 0, but just as a way to sort of shrink it down a bit. So we can adjust the spacing here of this. So 30 is too narrow, 50, even that still not quite. That feels about right. So then this one, in terms of our left one, we zero out the X. Width, well, we know, I think it's going to be something like 215. There we go. That means then we also know that this one is going to be 215. Now we could use things like layout elements to override the spacing there. But in the case like of this, where I'm not dynamically adding in extra elements here, I can leave that out. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to, all three of these, I'm going to just turn the image off for now. I'm not getting rid of it because I might want to bring it back later. I'm also going to bring the score sizes here up a little bit. There we go. And with all of these, that's good. We've got the images turned off and our main score HUD. That one, I'm also going to keep the image but turn it off for now because I might still want it later. Because we might want to be making it that we've got color changes there or having things flash. So there's different things that we could be doing there just as little bits of sort of feedback to the player, which can be really good. So with my UI, what I want to do is I want to actually set up a script for managing the score HUD. So I want this to be able to be something that I can control and manage. So the idea behind this is we're making our code more modular. So rather than the game manager, which will be tracking the score, knowing directly the controls and updating those, it just needs to know the score HUD, and then it can tell the score HUD, hey, change the score. Also means then that if we're needing to modify what happens in that case, if we're doing animations, things like that, it's more contained, it's within the score HUD, so it keeps our files more manageable in length and avoids just sort of ending up with really monolithic bloated classes, which just get really hard to work with. Player 1, score, and player 2 score. I'm going to call these displays. So then I'm just going to have public void on change player 1 score and new score. And we'll also have on change player 2 score. So the score HUD's not tracking what our score is, it's displaying it. So important difference there. The game manager will be responsible for tracking it. The score HUD is only interested in displaying the information. It's not going to check the integrity of the score or anything like that. It's just displaying it. So we can easily set the text here to string. Done. And then player 2 score to string. And then we also are going to want an option for resetting the scores. Reset scores. And that can just go player 1 score display text is, I kind of want to keep that double digit thing. I kind of really like that. So I might do it like this. And if I want to have that leading 0 there, then what I should be able to do is, I think that will do the trick. think I've remembered the format strings. There's different format strings, they're called, that you can use here. And I believe that format string will do what I'm after. So I can link up my score HUD. So it means then it has player 1 score, and this is the advantage with making sure we named these appropriately. It means it's really easy to tell, because if I just left them with their default names, it would be text. And then I don't know if I've linked the correct ones up, so it just helps us avoid potential mistakes. So that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So then our game manager is then the next one. So the game manager's job is it's going to know when scoring changes, and it's going to talk to the score HUD. So let's take a look at our game manager then. So it's going to keep track of player 1 score, player 2 score. So it's keeping track of that. Now I want this to be a singleton as well, so I'm going to shamelessly steal my setup here so I'm not reinventing the wheel. Need to always, if you're doing this, make sure you're careful about renaming things so that it's very clear that yes, things are properly updated. So that's good. So let's link these pieces together on player 1 goal. Well, actually, so yeah, on so if we think about this, on player 1 goal hit, look void on player 2 goal hit. So we're indicating which goal was hit. Because we can, in the ball controller here, well, we know, okay, goal's been scored, and I might change where this is happening, because what I'm going to do is game manager on player 1 goal hit. Then this will be game manager instance on player 2 goal hit. So I'm going to get rid of the goal scored because, and this is the advantage with having it in that separate audio manager, it's really easy for me to just bring it over here. So it makes this much simpler for when we are needing to make changes like of this. It's a good simplification for us. Now, a game manager needs to be able to talk to our score HUD. Now, the score HUD, I could make a singleton, but because not many things are going to need to be talking to it, so I generally use singletons when I have multiple things needing to talk to the same manager object. If I'm not needing that, then I'll usually just link them up. So score HUD, this one is going to be score UI. And so at start, score UI, I want it to reset the scores. When we've hit the player 1 goal, then player 2 score goes up, and score UI on change player 2 score, and we give it the new value. Whereas in this case, player 1 score goes up, and score UI on change player 1 score. Okay, so it should mean that once we link up our game manager to the score HUD, we should actually see scores changing. So we're hoping for with this, that we see scores changing. So that's correct. We're seeing the behavior. Now we did get an exception here, and that's because we set up UI, but we need to change this to using the correct input system module. Okay, so that's good. We've got it being able to pick up that we've scored a goal, so that's great. So we've got scoring and score UI happening. Now, we do have a last part of that we kind of forgot of main level spawning the ball, because that's the thing that we need to make sure we've got in there. So let's set up that. And this is the thing that the game manager is perfect for handling with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to the current ball location, I'm going to create an empty parent. And then I'm going to just remove the ball from out under that. The reason being is this is going to be our ball spawn point. So that's good. Now I might put that under the game manager because it is very much something that the game manager owns. Now the ball, because I want to be able to respawn it, I'm going to turn the ball into a prefab. So it's looking good. Whoops, not in materials. Let's move that over to prefabs. And that means then I can delete this one from the scene because we need to have the ball being spawned. So, okay, new eyes field. So we need to be able to refer to the ball prefab. That will let us spawn it initially. Now that ball prefab, I'm actually going to make it so that it does not start moving to begin with. So I'm going to turn off our auto launch option. It's because the game manager is now going to be the one that controls this launching. So when we might have that happen after a delay. So serialize field, float, initial ball, spawn delay. Now we could have this also then wait until a key is pressed, something like that. But I like the idea of having a actual sort of countdown timer or something like that. So let's say that this is going to be 2 seconds. Now, this is actually one where I would be inclined to set up a coroutine for this. So serialize field also, we're going to do this for what I want to keep track of here is ball spawn point, because you might want to vary that. And I'm also going to keep track of the spawn ball, which actually I'm going to use the ball controller script for that. All right, so that looks good. So let's set up our coroutine for spawning the ball. So IEnumerator, spawn new ball, spawn delay. Now, because it's a coroutine, I'm going to yield return new, wait 4 seconds, spawn delay. And then what I will do is a game object instantiate. So I want to instantiate my ball prefab, and I want to position that at the spawn point position. The rotation is just going to be the identity. We don't want any rotation there for it. And I think parenting it to the game manager makes sense. Transform, so that's good. So this is going to be the spawned ball. Actually, new ball, because then what I would do is spawned ball equals new ball dot get component ball controller. I've got that, because then I can say, hey, spawn ball, launch. So I can manually kick off that launching. So spawn and launch new ball. And we can do the destruction of the previous one here. Destroy previous ball with present. So F, we have spawn ball. So if that's not equal to null, then we would say spawn ball, we would say destroy spawn ball dot game object. So we want to destroy the parent object there. And yeah, no, I can just destroy that. Don't need to set it to null. We want to destroy the parent, not if we just did spawn ball in here, it would just remove that component, that script. We want to actually clean up the entire object. Because what this means is then when we have this idea of a goal being scored and things like that, well, we'll be able to start coroutine, spawn new ball, and then initial ball spawn delay. And then we'll have a serialized field, just because we might want to control these differently. Respawn ball delay. So I'm going to keep them the same now, but we will use them differently in code, just as a thing where we might want to have more of a control over that. There might be circumstances where we want to actually do different things. So let's just get this hooked up. And this should mean that we have the ball spawning, that we have sound happening, and that when we score a point, the ball will respawn. So we're expecting after like a couple of seconds it to spawn and start moving. And that would be much more likely to happen if I gave it something to spawn and a location to spawn at. Always keep an eye out for errors. There's such easy ones to run into. So it spawned the ball. Now it didn't launch. So that's something where we want to take a look and see what happened there. So this didn't have the rigid body. And the reason it didn't have that is because start hasn't run yet. So this is the thing that can happen. We spawn a prefab, we've got things linked up here like this, but start doesn't get run immediately. So this is a case where I am going to update that prefab. So we have to actually manually configure the rigid body. Got this. So I'll update the prefab. That's just a thing where, when you're spawning stuff, if you're needing to then call functions on it, you need to be aware that start will not have necessarily run. Okay, let's try this. So should after a couple of seconds, it spawns, starts moving, score a point. Really, there we go. It's properly, cleaning up, so that's good. Scoring is happening, excellent. Means we can get rid of our debug logs that we had here for when it was hitting stuff, because that is behaving. So we have spawning of the ball happening, which is great. So we now have a few more bits and pieces that we can then get set up. So one of the things is this game over. Because that's something where that we're not currently detecting that score that we're trying to head towards. So let's have serialized field int points for victory. Let's set that to 5. And what I'm also going to do is game state laying and game over. Just because what I can then do is I want to be able to have some control over, because we don't want to respawn if the game is already over. So game state. This would also then allow us to actually start to do things like having an initial delay or countdown, things like that, where we've got more stuff happening there for the user. So I have that state where it's playing. So, okay, we've got our setup here. Now, I want to refactor a little bit of this to have goals scored, because we've got a bunch of duplication here. That coroutine being started, the playing of the sound, all of those are common things. So let's remove these and bring them into here, just so we're not duplicating code. Always try and avoid repetition of code, because it's very easy to then, when you're making changes, miss updating one of the areas and then run into problems where you've got bugs that have happened because you haven't caught all the areas to update. So, okay, got the goal scored, we've got the coroutine for respawning, but let's check if any player has won. So if player 1 score is equal to, what do I call it? Points for victory. Or player 2 score is equal to points for victory, then I want to do different things. So I don't want to play the on goal scored. I want to play my one for the game being over. So audio manager instance on game over. So I want to play that sound. I also don't want to do the respawning. And I want to change the state to game over. Let's try spelling that correctly. So that looks good. That should mean that we get the game over. So what I then want to do is I'm going to set up a Unity event. Engine events. So that I can have an event that happens when the game over gets triggered. So serialize field Unity event on game over. And that's just going to be a new Unity event. And what we do down here is on game over, invoke. This will just allow us to kick off a lot of additional things if we want or need to. Because, for example, we might want to put up a particular message on the screen, something like of that. And I think that'll be the next thing we add in. And we can just check with this that we want to see, hopefully, the game over trigger. So we've got everything there. Now, try and intentionally play badly. Why is that when I need to play badly, I can't? Nearly at game over. Oh. Trying to make it as nail-biting a game as possible. Wow. Well, whoever gets this next point wins. So there we go. And we don't get the ball spawning anymore, which is great. So we're detecting endgame condition. Now we want to set up our HUD for that actual endgame having happened. So game over HUD. That can be aligned into the center. I reckon 500 by 500 works. Let's get some text happening in here. Game over text. Let's also have one for winner. And then we will have a couple of buttons. Play again and main menu. Just so we can get those happening. Play again. Main menu. These I want to bring down to the bottom. So let's bring these down. So actually play again. This is where actually, what I would often do in case like of this, just for neatness, is I would probably set up another panel for buttons and just bring that panel so that it's oriented down the bottom here. Not strictly necessary, but I just like using panels as a way of keeping things neater. because then I bring these into this. I just add in a horizontal layout group, position everything in the center, but then force expand them. So I can just set up a little bit of padding on all the sides. And a bit of spacing there. Yeah, it's a bit too much. Maybe like 10 or 5. Keep it consistent with the rest. So that's looking good. Let's increase the font size here, a bit of these. So there we go, we've got our buttons. That looks all right. And then I'd probably set up another panel here for the main text. As I know, my buttons panel is taking up 75. So this, I would bring that up to be like that. Bring these 2 bits of text into it. I just like doing this as a way of keeping things neat and organized. So winner text. Because I would turn off the image on this one to actually remove that component. Get rid of that. This panel, I actually want it to darken the background. So I'm going to make this dark. Maybe a stronger alpha. That's better. Same with the buttons, I think, as well. I think that'll contrast them nicely. That looks good. Happy with that. So the winner text is going to be up the top here. Just have, actually, sorry, that's the game over text I'm wanting to do that with. Game over text. Bring that to the top, get rid of our padding. Bring that right up here. We want this to be centered in the middle. Game over. Let's increase the size of this a bit. And I think we need to bring our height here up a bit. That's pretty good. We could also, we would be able to do a lot of customizing of the font with this stuff as well. This one, I'm going to center. We know the top we offset by 75. And I might offset actually no, I think if I center it, I won't need to do any offsetting. That's pretty good. So let's work out what the text here is probably going to look like. We might say player, X has beaten player, or actually player X wins by Y points. That's pretty good. So that'll be the text that we want to actually display in there. So happy with that. Got our buttons. Let's again set up a script that's managing a lot of that side of things. So game over HUD. So it's going to need to react to these buttons being pressed. So we'll need to bring that in. Public void on again. So again, that'll talk to the game manager. I might not actually do that directly though. I've got yeah, actually, I think I have another approach of what I want to do with that. Same with the main menu. Going to go for a slightly different approach for those than what we might normally use. So we want Text Mesh Pro, want a serialized field, and then with this we want the winner message display, and that's going to be Text Mesh Pro UGUI. Grab the initial text that we set up here for this. So what we will do is have something here where it is public void on set win text. And let's have winner number point difference. Then we can say here, winner message display dot text is equal to, got this, so then we can just start to piece these bits in. So plus winner number, got toString, and we can say the amount point difference got toString. That works. And then our game manager is going to need to be able to talk to that. So it's going to need a link to the game over HUD. Game over HUD. And that's going to be the game over UI. Because then down here where the game is over, game over UI set win text. And so the winner number is potentially going to be either player 1 or player 2. So if, one way we could do this is, so let's set here winner number, player 1 score is greater than player 2 score, then the winner number is 1, otherwise it's 2. So we've got the winner number, and then the points delta. Well, we can use a mathf absolute, player 1 score minus player 2 score. It doesn't matter which one is larger. The difference is actually the same. It's just in one case it's positive, in the other case it's negative. So we just want the actual difference here, so we can just use this setup. Set the win text. I'm going to do that before I invoke this event. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to give us a text, a game over HUD. We can link up our script. Then we can link up the winner text, a game manager. We can link up as well for the HUD UI. So now in terms of having that end moment trigger, so I actually want to set up timelines. I'm going to use timeline for bringing this display up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a timeline game over, inline game over, and then I might also create a timeline. So timeline, play again. No, timeline. Game over to main menu. That looks all right. I'm going to create an empty object that'll hold the timelines. So the reason I'm using timelines is by setting it up already with timelines from the scratch like this, it means that it's really easy for me to then customize this. It means I've already got the hooks in there for how I want the stuff to behave. So if I then want to later on come and layer in different visual effects, things like that, it's really easy for me to be able to do that. So that's the main reason for doing this. So the goal behind the game over timeline is what it's going to do is this interface, it's going to bring that interface up and make that accessible. Because what we want to do is this game over HUD. Firstly, I'm going to attach a canvas group to it because that will allow us to fade it in and out. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to turn it off. So we want it to be inactive at first, and this timeline event is going to activate it. So these timelines, I want to make sure they are not set to play on awake. And the wrap mode, I want them set to hold for the moment. So let's get our game over one up and running. We can edit that timeline. So if we bring up sequencing and timeline, I'm going to bring this down to here, we can see it. So what this is going to do is it's going to animate this game over HUD fading in. So I'm going to start with its alpha at 0, and it's not going to be interactable, and it won't block raycasts. So it's effectively, this thing is doing nothing at this stage, which is the point. So our game over one, well, let's drag our object down here. First thing is we want an activation track because we're going to be turning this on. And we can see the time frame that that'll do. So we want to probably have this be, I think, more like 2 seconds. We want it to be pretty rapid that it's bringing this in. Post-playback state, set that to active. And then we want to, now that we've got that, we want to create an animation track. So we can hit record. We have a game over HUD, and so we can see a canvas group here. So I want to make sure that's down at 0, and all of the things that I'm wanting it to lock at a particular value, I just want to set those up. So in this, we get to our 2 seconds. Just have it like that. At this point, we want alpha to be 1. I want it to be interactable, and it should be blocking raycasts. And that looks pretty good. At that point, it's ready to go. So we'll play it, it'll fade it in, we've got the text there. So to hook that up, what we would do is our game manager, well, on game over, we say, hey, my timeline for the game over, I want you to play. So that's good. That will have it do that logic. What about if we wanted to play again? Because that we need to fade things away. So this one, what we would do is, I'm going to rename this as well, just so it's clear that it's coming from the game over one. Not strictly necessary, I don't think, but just for neatness. So my game over to playing again, well, that needs to fade out the game over HUD and also turn it off. So we're going to bring in an activation track. And this will do this over 2 seconds. And we'll see what we want to do here is, because during this whole period it needs to be active, but at the end of that, it'll make it inactive. And then we do a similar thing with the animation. We add in an animation track. Let's record that, our game over HUD. We know it's starting at this. And then we know at the end, it's going to, that being 0, it's not interactable, there's raycasts are blocked. And actually, we want to turn off raycasts and interactivity right at the very beginning. We don't want it to be able to be kicking off any further logic at that point. So that looks all right. It'll fade it out. Good. Now, it does need to tell the game to restart though. So we need a setup here in our game manager for restarting a game. I'll look void on restart game. So, well, we need to score UI reset scores. We need to say player 1 score is equal to player 2 score equal to 0. So we reset our scores. We need to then also we'll be launching the ball, and our state goes back to eGame state playing. So we're resetting our scores, reset scores, playing, prepare to spawn the ball. Just so we've got that sort of set up. Now we also know we've got the idea of going back to the main menu. So on main menu, so this is where Unity Engine, Scene Management, main menu. I wouldn't normally bother put the using in for when I'm just doing one thing with it. Might put it in just for brevity of the setup there. That's good. We've got our hooks here, and we need to have our timelines talk to that. So our timelines do that using signals. So we can set up a signal. Signal play again. And we're also going to have a signal for go to main menu. Because what we would do is in here, we need to talk to our game manager. So we bring this in, it's a signal track. We can bring in play again. And I'm going to kick this off just a little bit before the end. So the countdown starts about that point, I think is good. Just as, we're playing again, we're expecting it to be starting fairly soon. We don't want it to be too long a delay, but we want a little bit of a delay there. That looks good. Game manager, well, needs to react to play again. And it reacts by saying, hey, game manager. And then we have restart game. While we're here, we might as well add in a reaction for going to the main menu. And on main menu. And then let's set up our main menu track here, which we know, and we can actually select our play again one. Can grab all of these, copy, select the over to main menu, paste those in. Now, I intentionally did a copy from the timeline rather than duplicating the timeline. The reason being that I have run into issues previously when I have done that otherwise with a timeline. When I've duplicated it, I've had that cause issues. So we can link these up. Our buttons, play again. Well, that's going to invoke this timeline. Playable director, play, and then main menu. It's also going to run a timeline. So once I go to main menu, playable director, and play. So we should, all going well, when we run, we know score tracking, things like that will happen, but we will also make it a little bit close. And we could do stuff to, things like alternating which one it uses for launch direction. So this behavior is really annoying, but is also very true to the game. And our last one. Fades in, it's interactable. So player 2 is won by 2 points, which is correct. So let's try playing again. Fades out, scores reset. So that behavior is working nicely. We just want to make sure that going to the main menu works. And so then in this case, it didn't play the timeline. So this is because we had our timeline set to hold. So something that we want to, there's two ways that we can sort of work around this. One of the options is in our game manager. When we go to do the playing of these, we can also stop the other ones. Or if we select these, and we just turn them to none. because we've set those activation tracks, we've set the behavior there in terms of, no, this thing stays active afterwards. We shouldn't need to do anything more than that. Player 2 win again. Nearly there. Good, so it appears. Let's play again, fades out. And then this time around, because the timeline isn't in hold mode, we should be able to safely have it replay that option for going to the menu. Good, so it plays again, behavior is correct. Can say go to the main menu, should wait for a little bit, we're back to the main menu. So we have our game over section working. And we've got a bunch of other bits up and running. So we're nearly, at this stage we've got something that's fully functional, but there's other bits that we want to add into this in terms of settings and credits and our AI, and then look at enhancements. So we'll look at those in the next video, but for now, looking at the key things, we set up a bunch of managers, and we specifically went for setting up an audio manager so that it was a lot easier for us controlling where sound was being kicked off from. And as we saw, it made for a really easy way of being able to kick off audio. We were able to easily move stuff from our ball over into the game manager. And so our audio manager and game manager, those were really easy for us being able to migrate code into and having them talk to things. We used timelines for when we're having the game end so that we can easily change and add in extra effects there. If we wanted to be kicking off audio, if we wanted to be kicking off visual effects, it's very easy for us to do that now that it's there in timeline. And we saw for the UI, setting up this idea of little sort of helper wrapper scripts, that their goal is to simplify the interface to that UI. And so it means that if we needed to change extra effects for the UI, that it's self-contained, it's within that script, and it's not something where, like our game manager script doesn't have to care about the UI. It doesn't need to know how it works, it just needs to know the script that it talks to for it. So it makes for a really good structure and setup there with it. So dive in and experiment with it, but there's going to be some more cool things we're adding just to finish off the project, and then looking at some potential enhancements there that we can be making. Thanks, folks. If you're looking for the code for the project, then in the description below, you'll find a link to the GitHub. And on the GitHub, I've got the code for this project and for all of the other projects there freely available. And if you have found the video helpful and you'd like to support the channel, then throwing in a like or subscribing is always a huge help. If you're looking for further ways to support, then I do have a Patreon set up, and that's going to help me keep managing to do these videos for a long time to come, which is going to help more people make cool things. And that's awesome, because that's what this is all about, is helping more people make more cool things. And that is all. Thank you.